Welcome to the AI Executive Brief. I'm Stephen Forte. On today's episode, a warehouse fire in Southern California, a 14-month Russian intelligence operation that changed cybersecurity forever, and a 40-minute AI breach that hit every major lab at once. And what connects all three to the employee who just handed in their badge? Yesterday, I told you about the citizen hacker, Sastoy. The idea that AI has made serious, scalable damage available to ordinary people with motive and access, regardless of technical skill. Today is the physical proof of concept. Act 1, the fire, and what it's actually about. On Tuesday morning at 12:30 a.m., a 29-year-old logistics employee at a Kimberly-Clark distribution center in Ontario, California, went missing when the other 20 people in the building evacuated. He was not missing. He was the reason they were running. 1.2 million square feet of toilet paper and facial tissue, which is, as it turns out, extraordinarily combustible when you need it not to be. The sprinklers tried. They lost. 175 firefighters from 3 counties responded. By dawn, they had retreated to exterior-only operations, which is the professional way of saying there was nothing left worth going inside for. The roof collapsed. Total loss. Chamel Abdulkarim, 29, of Highland, California, was later arrested and charged with multiple felony arson counts. A video circulating online appears to have been filmed by Abdulkarim himself, a detail that represents a truly remarkable miscalculation about the permanence of digital evidence. The public reaction on social media distilled the motive to 6 words: should have paid us more. Kimberly-Clark stock fell 4.1%. The facility served 50 million people. And this is why I'm telling you about a toilet paper warehouse. One person with legitimate inside access and fuel that was already in the building accomplished more destruction than 175 trained professionals could stop. That is the pattern this entire episode is about. Access, motive, fuel already inside. Yesterday's podcast was about what happens when that pattern meets AI in the digital world. Today is about what happens when that same pattern is already being built into your network at scale, and 2 recent events that prove it. Act 2. The fuel being loaded right now. 500,000 technology workers are forecast to be cut this year, with AI cited as the driver. 78,557 were gone in Q1 alone, nearly half attributed to AI. Goldman Sachs is warning the displaced will face long, costly job searches because the roles they'd normally pivot to are being filled by the systems that replace them. Sam Altman said something refreshingly honest last week that deserves to be quoted directly. Some of it is AI washing. Companies are blaming AI for cuts they were going to make anyway. He said it on the record. I appreciate the candor, even if the people being let go probably don't. Here is where this becomes a security story rather than a workforce story. Most companies cannot tell you in real time what systems a terminated employee still has access to. Credential revocation is a manual process. It takes days, sometimes weeks. Nobody is particularly enthusiastic about doing it at 5 p.m. on a Friday when they've just finished cutting 30 people. The person walking out the door knows your systems, your credential structure, your vendor integrations, and which legacy access nobody has touched since 2023. They were invited into those systems. They know where everything is. Abdulkarim needed to be in the building to strike his match. A disgruntled technical employee can do the same from a coffee shop 6 months after their last day, using access that was never revoked into systems that nobody has audited since the company was a third smaller. This is not a hypothetical. It is the pattern from yesterday's episode applied at 500,000 person scale, loaded quietly into corporate networks every single week this year. Act 3, SolarWinds, the reference case you've heard of, but probably don't know. Before I get to last week's AI breach, you need the SolarWinds story in your vocabulary, because once you understand the pattern, you'll see it everywhere. SolarWinds makes Orion, a network management platform used by 33,000 organizations, including federal agencies and Fortune 500 companies. IT departments were required to keep it updated. Patching promptly was ironically considered best practice. In September 2019, Russian intelligence, the SVR, the same organization behind the 2016 DNC hack, got inside SolarWinds' own software build system. Not a customer, the vendor itself. In February 2020, they injected a backdoor into a routine software file. On March 26th, a standard update went out. 18,000 organizations installed it. Security tools approved it. It bore SolarWinds' own digital signature. IT teams installed it because that is the responsible thing to do when a trusted vendor releases an update. The malware then waited 12 to 14 days, specifically to outlast the sandbox analysis tools that test new software in quarantine. Then it began phoning home to Russian servers, disguising everything as legitimate SolarWinds telemetry, undetected for 14 months. Victims: the U.S. Treasury, Homeland Security, State Justice, the Department of Energy, including the division that manages nuclear weapons, Microsoft, Intel, Cisco, Deloitte, and FireEye. FireEye deserves a special mention. They are a cybersecurity company whose entire business is detecting exactly this kind of thing. They found the SolarWinds attack in December 2020 while investigating their own breach. That is the professional equivalent of your locksmith discovering your house has been robbed while they were robbing it. Recovery: $90 million. Average revenue impact: 11%. SolarWinds later settled shareholder lawsuits for $26 million. The SEC charged their CISO personally, the first time in history the SEC had ever charged an individual executive for a cybersecurity failure, supported by a 2018 internal presentation in which SolarWinds' own team described their remote access setup as, and I am quoting directly, not very secure. As it turns out, they were not wrong. The reason SolarWinds still matters in 2026 is the core lesson. The attackers did not break in. They were invited in through a trusted update from a known vendor with a valid signature into organizations that were doing everything correctly. The trust was the attack surface. Act 4, 40 minutes. And here is what I find genuinely unsettling about last week's breach. It achieved roughly the same outcome in 40 minutes by a group that is not Russian state intelligence. Light LLM is an open source library that routes calls between your applications and AI models. OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, downloaded over 10 million times. The plumbing behind your kitchen sink. You don't think about it, you depend on it. A poisoned version was published to PyPI, the Python package repository, the same kind of trusted distribution channel that SolarWinds' update server was, and it was active for 40 minutes. In those 40 minutes, the attack cascaded to Mercor, a $10 billion AI training data platform that supplies labeled data to OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google, all three at the same time, which, from an attacker's perspective, is a beautifully efficient target: one node, 3 blast radii, lapsus claims 4 terabytes, candidate profiles, 8,000 plus video interviews, VPN credentials, source code. YC President Gary Tan. National security problem. The same week, Anthropic accidentally shipped Claude Code with 512,000 lines of internal source code visible to anyone who downloaded it. Not an attack, a mistake, but both events follow the same logic. The trust in vendor software distribution is the attack surface. IBM X-Force reports supply chain attacks have quadrupled since SolarWinds. The Russian operation took a foreign intelligence service and 14 months of preparation. The Light LLM attack needed 40 minutes and an open source package. The barrier has dropped. The targets have gotten more valuable. Go back to the warehouse. One person, access already granted, fuel already in the building. Yesterday's citizen hacker had AI tools. The SolarWinds attackers had nation-state resources. The Light LLM breach needed a PyPI account and 40 minutes. What these have in common is not the sophistication of the attacker. It's that in each case, the threat was already inside before anyone knew there was a threat. The close. So today, building on yesterday, the warehouse fire is the physical version of a pattern that is now playing out in AI infrastructure at scale. 500,000 people walking out the door this year with knowledge, credentials, and access that companies are not revoking fast enough. A 2020 operation that established the playbook, and a breach last week that ran the same play in 40 minutes. 3 things. Departing access, audit it the moment the conversation happens, not after HR finishes the paperwork. AI dependency monitoring, socket and snike. Watch your open source packages in real time and catch poisoning before it cascades. And AI-powered log monitoring, not a luxury, but the only tool that moves fast enough to catch a 40-minute window. The threat is this: the threat was already inside, the fuel was already in the building. One decision is the only variable between a normal Tuesday and a 6-alarm fire. You cannot catch a fire that's already burning. Remove the fuel before someone strikes the match. That is the AI executive brief for Thursday, April 9th. I am Stephen Forte. If this was useful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I will be back Friday with more. Until then, stay sharp.